Deltarune is a game that I hold dear to my heart. It's something that connects with my inner child. Mainly because I used to be one of those cringy, chronic Undertale fans back in the day when it first came out, and I used to sit in class and watch those weird fan comic dubs that people would post online. But aside from that, it's also because of how magnificent its creator is and how beautifully he creates his work. We all know that with the release of chapters 3 and 4 happening not too long ago, everyone's been playing the game in different and unique ways, doing their own styles of everything. But something that I thought of trying that I can't quite seem to find online anywhere is playing the entire game as just Kris. Now, what I mean by that is specifically acting and doing a pacifist playthrough. As you can tell by the title, I'm going to be completing chapters 1 through 4 solely relying on Kris. That means no Ralsei for healing or anything like that, and then definitely no Rude Busters from Susie. However, before we begin, I do want to lay down some ground rules for this challenge. During my playthrough, I came across a few instances that stumped me pretty hard, which I'll cover as we get there. So, without spoiling too much of the video, here's how I played the game. I only used the act commands in Kris's section. Aside from that, every single turn for Susie and Ralsei was used for guarding or defending. Now, to be specific here, when I say one of Kris's acts, I will be including the X commands, or certain commands that use other party members. I know this technically goes against the rules, but it isn't being used in Susie or Ralsei's command prompts specifically, so I'm not counting it as a loss. Of course, if I didn't have to use them, I wouldn't. But for the sake of story progression, which there were some times where I could not progress the story no matter what I tried unless I use an act command, with everybody else involved. There's really no other limiters that I placed on myself for this challenge. I didn't use anyone except Kris in battles, and I made sure to recruit everyone in each chapter, including the secret or side bosses. Except Shadow Mantle, because I really can't be bothered to do all that, but if it's that big of an issue, I'll go back through and do it again. So, without further ado, let's get into the world's most tedious Deltarune gameplay. So, we start our journey by creating a vessel. Now, we're going to get through a little bit of dialogue here. It's going to ask us to confirm a few things and just really get us into the basics of the game. So, once we are in this vessel creation section, we're going to choose a few customizable options to create our character. And I really just kind of go with whatever here. I'm not too picky about it. But I know some people that are pretty specific about it. And then after this, we get to choose a few traits for it. We get to give it a blood type, choose its favorite food, and then we're going to give it a name. And the name for your character, I don't remember if it is your character's name or your name, which appears on the save file. But after that, they discard it, and we wake up in the morning to Toriel asking us to wake up. So, as she states, if we don't get up, we're going to be late for school. And she's going to go ahead and wait outside for us. So all we have to do is just get out of bed, and we're going to walk downstairs and outside. And this is where the game begins. So, Toriel is going to talk to us about Azriel coming back home from college soon as she drives us to the school. Now, technically, the game doesn't actually start until we get into the school, if you want to count the game as being where you can move around. But it's going to go ahead and give us a small little tour of all the people in the town and just kind of what's going on just before we get into the serious business. And something I like about this is that it's just kind of a nice little wave of freshness before all the craziness happens. It's a nice little touch. So, we'll hug Toriel, we'll walk over to class, and we'll get started with the game. So, we're going to get in, and after talking for a little while, our teacher Alphys is going to tell us that we need to be in groups for a project. So, we'll ask Noelle, but Birdley, as you could see, doesn't want to do a group of 3. So, Susie comes in. And everybody's a little afraid of Susie because I guess she's kind of like the bully. So, the chalk is missing. She's going to ask Susie to go get it. And we're going to go with Susie to get the chalk. This is one of those classic, if nobody fesses up, everybody gets in trouble. Everybody's had one of those moments. But that aside, Alphys is a little bit of a scaredy cat, which I'm not sure why they chose to make her that way. It's, you know, it's not that bad. It's just, she could have had a little bit better of a character trait. But we're going to go with Susie, and we're going to make sure that she doesn't do anything mischievous and get up to no good. So, when we walk outside, we're going to see that she's eating the chalk. Susie will turn around and notice that we saw her, and she'll threaten us a little bit, threatening to tear our face off and make sure that we get buried if we tattle on her. But ultimately, she decides against it out of respect for Toriel. So, she puts us down, and she tells us to come with her as we go and find the chalk in the closet. Now, regardless if you go fast or slow in that section, she'll get mad at you for going some type of speed. But we're going to be going into the closet here. Susie gets a little afraid, and we end up both going in at the same time. Now, obviously, this isn't any normal closet. This is the very beginning of the game itself as a whole. And Susie's going to be talking about how the closet's broken. We're going to go back, and the door is going to shut on us. Obviously, this freaks out Susie. And as she walks over to the door and bounds on the door, the ground starts shaking and falls from beneath us. And then we descend into, I guess, nothingness, really. But we wake up in the dark world, get to our senses, and we just stroll around for a little bit. Eventually, we do meet up with Susie. She tells us to back off before realizing it's us. And she tells us that we're going to scare her and she's going to clock us in the face next time. So, she ends up saying that we need to leave. We walk around for a little bit and we find this little town with seemingly nobody inside. As we go up, we meet the third character. And this character is going to talk to us about the prophecy. Now, I'm not going to put the whole prophecy in here because I'm not going to go over the entire story. I'm really just going to be kind of summarizing everything that happens in my playthrough. But Susie talks about how she doesn't see herself as a hero and doesn't want anything to do with it. And right as we're about to leave, our favorite character shows up. The GOAT, Lancer. So, for our first battle of the game, all I did was just use Act. I warned Lancer so that he wouldn't take damage, because again, I'm doing a pacifist and I don't want to end up harming any enemies. So all we do is we really just get through this first basic fight, and we act, and we let him know that we aren't trying to fight. So he'll run away because his bike is running out of fuel, and that concludes our first battle. So for most of the fights in this game, all I did was just defend and guard as Kris and Ralsei, and just use acting as Susie. I'm sorry, not Susie. I was acting as Kris. Sorry about that. But Ralsei says that we want to be friends. Susie's having none of it. So C decides to get on out of here and leave me and Ralsei by ourselves. So as me and Ralsei head down, we come towards a giant door, which is going to lead us to the main area of the Dark World for this chapter. And we come into our first fight. Now, again, as before, all I did was just use Act as Kris, and I had Ralsei defend. Now, these first fights are a little easy. There's not too much required to convince them. So, we breeze through it. We meet back up with Susie, who's patiently trying to open up a door. And we convince her to join our party back so that we can get through it easily. The only issue is that she doesn't want to be associated with our party. So, she likes to act like she doesn't know us because she thinks she's too cool. We come back up with Lancer. Susie gives Lancer a little lesson on how to be intimidating by threatening to bite his face off. And Lancer, being the absolute goat that he is, takes it as advice and then walks away. Well, he walks away after setting an enemy on us. These guys were super easy. All you have to do is really just act on one of them, and it'll instantly make all of them want to be your friend. Of course, we have to warn them about Susie first, but after we did that, we get through the basic attack, and we go ahead and try to befriend them. So, after this, we have the checker piece fight, and then after the checker piece fight, we go through and we kind of give Susie a little bit of a scolding, which kind of throws her off a little bit and makes her decide to join Lancer in being a bad guy. So, Rouse talks about the situation, says that he could have gone a little bit easier on her, and we go back up, we go to a bake sale, and I buy a Lancer cookie. Now, the thing about this Lancer cookie is that I did my absolute best to hold on to it for the entirety of the game, just because Lancer is the GOAT, and I didn't want to eat the cookie out of respect for him. So here you can see that I get one of the secret key pieces. This is in progression for the Jevil boss, and there I'm making an absolute goated structure, the duck. So for this, I had a little bit of a hiccup, because obviously you can't pacify this fight without using Ralse to sing. So this is one of those times where it doesn't technically count because it's still in Kris's command prompt. I was a little iffy about doing it at first, but ultimately I can't progress unless I do this. So we're going to put Susie to sleep, and then we're going to be able to convince Lancer not to fight with us, which in turn makes the battle end because Susie doesn't want Lancer to get hurt. So Lancer's going to talk about how he wants to be friends with us now. The battle is going to end, and Lancer's going to join our party. And as we walk through, Lancer ends up getting cold feet because we know that we have to fight his dad, and he runs away and leads us into the castle to be taken as prisoners. But that's okay, because Lancer doesn't actually want to do this, so we're not too mad at him right now. After these guys capture us and throw us in a jail cell, we get the option to play as Susie. And in this fight, all we do is just let the dialogue exhaust itself because there isn't much you can do aside from that. Lancer doesn't want to hurt Susie because they're friends, and Susie is a little hesitant to hurt him. After that, Susie ends up convincing herself that she's going to join the party and truly be a part of our team. I go ahead, I leave, I talk to Seam, and I get another key piece. I ask the Axeman to heal the key, and then we do the Jevil fight. So this fight took me a few attempts, mainly because it's one of those bullet hell enhanced bosses. Now, the problem with this especially was I only used Pirouette because I wanted to hold true that I could do everything like this with just Kris. Pirouette isn't bad, but it does a significantly less amount of sleepiness to Jevil than if you use an X command. Now, I ran into my first issue here because I couldn't do anything with Jevil unless I used Pacify as Ralse, which I know goes against the rules of the challenge, but at the moment I figured I would write it off as the fact that I did the entire fight as Kris, and I only use Ralse to end the fight. So I'm going to give a little bit of a gray area middle ground for that fight. And for this one, I didn't use anything other than the bow as Kris, which takes a little longer, but we can do it that way, so we will. Then we go to the King fight. King is going to get mad at Lancer for making friends, and the cool thing about the King fight is that we don't actually have to attack him, we just have to survive 15 attacks until he gets tired. So we survive his attacks, he gets tired, talks about how he can't fight very well, and then he's going to go against us after we try to heal him. And this here is really just proof that I did pacify everybody in this chapter, because after Susie says to get away from her friend, King is going to act all intimidated. But just at the very last moment, everybody that we've rescued this entire chapter comes through for us to save the day. So, after he is thwarted and thrown in a prison cell, we go ahead and end the chapter on a great note, seeing as Lancer becomes the new king of the castle, which is fitting. Rossi turns out to be a femboy, which isn't bad, but it shocks Susie a little bit, and we seal the first fountain. We wake up in the classroom, questioning if it was a dream or not, and then we head home after a long day of adventuring. So, we're going to head back home and go to sleep. We wake up to a little cutscene of Kris ripping out their soul and throwing it in a birdcage. And we see them go and do something that looks like it'll be a little dangerous, but I can assure you that nothing bad happens. And roll credits as we see the end of Chapter 1. So, after we do that, we go into Chapter 2, where we wake up to see that we ate all the pie that Toria left out for us. We go back to school where Susie is waiting for us, and Susie mentions that she wouldn't have shown up early if we weren't going to be on time. And this is a good moment because it represents the fact that they're beginning a great friendship that only begins to grow more and more over time. Susie drags us to the closet so we can go back to the dark world and have another adventure. But as we're talking, we hear somebody walk up, and it turns out to be no other than Noelle. Now, Noelle is coming to invite us to have a study session at the library, but this shocks Susie a little bit because clearly Susie hasn't had many friends before. So we go to the dark world, we visit, we come back, and we ultimately decide that our next course of action is to visit the library. Obviously, Lancer isn't going to be coming with us as he said he would because later we learn that people in the dark world can't cross to the light world. So once we're in the library, we notice that there's a dark world in the computer lab, which Susie and I obviously jump straight into. We see Noelle, she asks for a little bit of help, and then all of a sudden she's captured by a cage. After that, we meet Queen, who is probably the best antagonist of the entire series. That's just my opinion. So, after that, she runs away from a fight, and we start our first battle of the chapter. This is going to be the same as the battle system in Chapter 1. I'm still just using Kris, but, different characters. And then, after we finish the fight, we meet back up with Ralse, and we start the banger soundtrack of Chapter 2. When I get to that point. Alright, and then we're going to save our game, head in, we're going to do a few more battles, just some simple stuff. Got some unique and interesting enemies. And then, Queen challenges us to a match of a video game in order to lower our self-esteem. But we aren't tall enough, so everyone works together to help. We have a little miniature Mike Tyson Punch-Out section, which I enjoyed. Go back, do some more battles, and this is where we encounter my biggest issue in the entire playthrough. This fight requires you to make everyone dance at the same time, but the only problem is that you can't make them all dance unless everybody uses their own act commands. This was very devastating, and I really, really tried to find some solution to where I could just use Kris. But unfortunately, I could only do it if I used the S action and the R action. So, knowing this information, the answer to if we can beat the game with just Kris is unfortunately no. But I made a choice here. I would do the entire rest of the game seeing how much I could do with just using Kris. Because obviously you couldn't do anything here. This was a pretty big blow to my will to keep going because I knew that the challenge had ended at this point so early in the game too, which was very disappointing. But there is still so much to do and so much to experience, so I figured I wouldn't cut it short and I would just keep going. So after that battle, we get into another few rudimentary fights. We fight Birdley, the absolute moron, and I hate him. We fight him on the roller coaster, which is a pretty easy fight. It takes a little longer if you're just using Kris, which is to be expected, but it is still doable. It's not too hard. And then after we do the Birdley fight, he's gonna have his little roller coaster explode, and then the Queen is gonna come down and say the coaster isn't finished. We fall off, and then we end up in the trash dump, where Susie decides to take Ralse and split paths with us so they can go have a little solo adventure. We end up meeting up with Noelle, who asks us to truce with her and hide her from Queen. Queen ends up meeting up with us and asks us to truce because she wants to hide from Birdley, and Birdley asks us to truce so that he can help find Queen. So, next up, we take Noelle, we do some mice puzzle, we have a few battles, nothing too crazy or out of the pockets, and then we do another mouse room, and we see the goat Spamton. Oh my gosh, it's Spamton, it's Spamton, it's Spamton. So, we have our legendary little battle with Spamton, meet up with the rest of the gang, do another little mouse puzzle, and then we go back to talk to Spamton in his little shop. I buy the key gen from him after talking to him about our deal. I head into the mansion to go into the basement, deliver the key gen, and transfer him into an empty disc. This proceeds to be the difficult fight that took me a little bit too long. I was at first trying to do it with just Kris, but because it takes so many attempts, because it only does 2% per snap as just Kris, and I, for some reason, wasn't good enough to do the entire fight by just using Kris, because I didn't want to use everybody else for heals. I ended up caving, and I did use an X command for this fight by doing the X snap, which allowed me to be able to do the fight just a little bit easier. So, we end up breezing through the fight at some point later down the line, which allows us to beat Spamton, and Spamton, who, I love Spamton, but he doesn't realize that he's a puppet. So, once we beat the fight, he ends up deciding to snap his last string, which in turn kills his big puppet body. He turns into a shadow crystal for us, and thus concludes the secret boss of Chapter 2. We head back into the mansion, do a few swatch battles and change up some colors, and then we go into the acid lake, do a high five, and then we do a rules card fight. And he's using our absolute goat of a machine duck that we made in the last chapter. We finish that, Susie jumps down, Burley confesses to liking Susie, and then we do a wire fight, and then we fight Queen. At first, I was using just Kris, but it ended up taking a little too long, and I was dog sitting at the time of playing this, so I ended up having to do the X actions to hurry up the fight so I could go and do my responsibilities for watching the dog. The Queen fight in itself isn't too hard. It's a pretty simple and fun fight. All you have to do is lower her shields by having her drink, loosen up Birdly, and then Birdly can help you defeat Queen. Nothing too hard, but also nothing too simple. So it's a nice little change of pace compared to the last boss fight, which was just dodging attacks. So after we beat Queen, we have another fun little punch-out section, which isn't too hard if you know what you're doing. I like this fight specifically because it's a throwback to Punch-Out, and it's just a fun little kind of change of pace from the normal style of the game. And I can obviously tell that Toby Fox had an absolute blast making Deltarune because of how many fun and quirky things there are about this game. So, after we defeat Queen, she talks to us about becoming friends, basically. We seal another fountain, everybody wakes up in the computer lab, and after we head out, we go back home and invite Susie to hang out for the night. Susie and Toriel end up getting along a little bit. We go to the bathroom and shove our heart inside of a cabinet, climb out the window and come back, rip our soul out and shove it in the couch cushion. We make a dark fountain, and then we promptly lay back down on the couch and fall asleep, thus concluding Chapter 2. As we get into Chapter 3, we awake on a couch in the dark world, and we seem to be in kind of a giant pillow mountain area. Rossley has a little bit of an emotional breakdown. We get in the spotlight, and we meet Tenna, the absolute GOAT. I love Tenna. We start our first minigame of the chapter, which is a little bit of a desert, kind of a Zelda take on things. It's a pretty fun little minigame section, and it's a relaxing break from walking around, discovering things, and fighting. The fights in this game are a little bit different as the conditions are needing to be met for a good score if you want to get good rewards. Other than that, it's just a basic rudimentary fight. We have a little bit of a quiz section, which is pretty cool. Do some more fights, do some mini games, absolutely shred it on the guitar, and then we end up in a little bit of a tense situation with Tenna after we say that we don't want to play any more mini games. So he has a little bit of an emotional breakdown. We do a fight with him and turn off the button, allowing us to escape into TV World. After TV World, we play another little minigame with Ralsei as a horse. We do some more fights, and after that, this part is insanely scary. This is a horror game. Anyways, we do this fight where we recruit Lanino and Elnina. We go back and we fight Tenna while doing a few mini games in the process. Tenna's fight is a pretty fun little minigame section. I enjoyed it pretty thoroughly because of how it's put together and the way the battle works. The music is really fun, Tenna's got some funny quips, and it's overall not that intense of a fight. So I don't have any complaints about it. Honestly, this was one of my favorite fights in the game compared to the other bosses. Now, I'm not saying the other bosses are bad, but I'm saying that this one definitely has a lot of cool, fun features to it. So, after we get enough points, we go ahead and we defeat Tenna. Now, this part in its own isn't very difficult. You just got to shoot him in the face. And then after that, we do the night fight. Now, I want to preface first by saying that I tried for over 13 consecutive hours without breaks to beat the night, and I could not do it. I tried as just Kris. I even broke my own rules and was healing Kris with Susie and Ralsei, and I just couldn't do it. I tried and I tried and I tried, and eventually it wasn't even a point of getting mad that I couldn't do it anymore. I was just numb to the fact that I was dying and putting myself in this pattern. So I even went back and redid the entirety of Chapter 3 to get a better weapon in hopes of doing better in this fight. Now, obviously, I wanted to do this in order to get a good weapon and just prove that it is possible, which, if you can do a no-hit, then obviously you can do the fight as just Kris. But I personally just couldn't have myself sit through it anymore after doing it for that long, but if you guys really want me to do it, I'll go back and I'll do it again. So, after the knight beats our ass and kidnaps Undyne, we run to the shelter, only to be locked out at the last second. Susie, defeated, says we should just go seal the fountain. We go back, and that is the end of Chapter 3. So, Chapter 4 starts off with us sealing the fountain and waking up at home with Susie. We're invited to church. We sit through a little bit of a sermon. Well, I chose to sleep through it this time. We talk to Alphys, we talk to Noelle, and then we talk to Susie, and we end up deciding to go to Noelle's house at the end of the church section. We go outside and we see that Asgore tries to talk to Toriel, but Toriel stands him up in kind of a douchey way. I go back and I shred some more guitar just because, and then we go to Noelle's house. Now, once inside Noelle's house, Noelle gets distracted with Susie and we walk around for some clues. We go upstairs and we go into December's room, who is Noelle's older sister, rip out our soul before we can read the code in a guitar. And we have a little bit of a fight sequence between Kris and the soul in the closet while Susie and Noelle are talking. We get kicked out of the house by Noelle's mom. And after that, we go back to the church to go and find Toriel. But there's a dark world in the church, obviously. So once we get inside, we walk around for a little bit before meeting back up with the knight. And now this section is a little difficult. It's possible to get through without taking too much damage. But me personally, I'm just not that skilled at the game. So Susie gets knocked down after we see that the knight is there. And honestly, I think that the knight is kind of an easier final boss per se. I definitely think that he'll have more of a prominent role in the story in the later chapters, but right now he's really just kind of there as filler, which I'm not complaining about. I'm just kind of giving my commentary on it. So Susie gets knocked down, we rush up to try to fight the knight, and we get absolutely decimated. We fall down, Kris gets pieced up by a piece of glass, and Susie is going to attempt to heal Kris. And this is the first time that we see Ralsei act a little bit strange, which in at first isn't weird for his character because he's a little awkward. We go through some stairwells and we talk about a prophecy, which is the thing that we've been following through this entire time. I go through, and this part, I really just kind of go out of my way to find the enemies and fight them because I want to make sure that I am still getting every enemy for Castle Town. Now, the fights in this one are a little bit more difficult because the enemies hit for a little bit more. And we end up getting to see our GOAT, Gerson. Boom! I love Gerson so much. He's my favorite character in the entire game. And I go through here, and my second favorite character is Jackenstein, who we find as we progress through the dark here. This fight has my favorite track, well, my second favorite track in the entire game. And I'm going to play a little bit of it here. So the Jackenstein fight isn't too difficult. You just go through the house, collect little TP points, collect a key, and make sure you get out in time before he gets mad at you for taking too long to finish the attack. Now, the fun thing about this fight is the music and the fact that Jackenstein is just kind of a goofball, to be honest, and it makes it a fun fight. I don't have any complaints. I really enjoy this fight. I was actively looking forward to this fight in general, which is one thing that made me really upset about the night because I was taking so long to get to chapter 4. So we finish the fight. Gerson convinces Susie to heal Jackenstein unknowingly. We get the climbing gear, climb up a wall, and then we have another intimidating fight with a water cooler who ends up being a princess. I don't really understand it either, but, you know, it is what it is. Wasn't too hard of a fight. After that, we play a secret song on a secret piano. We go back down and we get into my second favorite fight in the entire game. It's just, it connects with me so deeply because of Gerson's words and the way he portrays how he feels about life and the prophecy as a whole. This fight is really interesting because of the mechanic. It's kind of similar to the Undyne fight in the Undertale, but it's not the same, as in the yellow arrows don't go around, and he has his own little turtle shell attacks. Now, aside from that, I love the song in this fight too, which I'll play a little snippet here. And in general, he's just a really well-written character. He's inspirational, he helps Susie build on her character, and he gives her confidence that she isn't somebody that people just have to be afraid of, and she can be her own person, which I think is an incredible way of portraying everything. And Gerson in general is just, he's just the GOAT. I mean, there's really not much else for me to say about it. Everybody in the fandom collectively agrees that he's the GOAT and that he's probably the strongest character in the game. So, we finish up the fight, we learn a little bit about stuff, and we get the hammer and a shadow crystal, seeing as this is technically a secret fight. Now, we climb another wall, we do a little bit of a few battles, which wasn't too hard. We play some music on another larger organ, which opens up a secret door in the study. And this section is really interesting because it shows for once a little bit more of Kris's character outside of the player's control. And I think it's very nice that we have those moments. So, we go back to the beginning, we climb up another wall and have another run-in with the Knight. The Roaring Fraud, might I add. So, we climb up yet another wall while trying to dodge some swords, which is a little bit difficult, but we managed to get through it. Not too bad. Climb up this section, and then Susie runs after the Knight, and ultimately the Knight is faster and ends up getting away because he's scared of running the Fade with Susie, who could easily destroy him given the chance. We seal the fountain because we can't get through the door. We go back into the church after sealing the fountain in order to try to find a door code, which lets us back into the main area. And this is where, sadly, Susie learns that Gerson isn't alive anymore. And with that being said, she makes her own dark fountain. We go back into kind of a reverse sanctuary area where we learn a little bit more about the prophecy as a whole. We do a few more fights, which isn't too hard. These guys are a little bit difficult because of how fast they shoot out the bullets, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't get past. Next up, we do an organ fight. These guys are also a little difficult because of the musical notes and how unpredictable the pattern is. To each their own. I go through and I eat some moss, which obviously you can't not eat the moss. We end up about to learn about the ending of the prophecy, which is a little bit disturbing because it insinuates that somebody has to die. We climb up another wall. We go back to the study in order to see the old man, but the old man isn't there. We go into the dark hoping to find him, but we get separated and Susie ends up in a fight with what appears to be the old man at first, but it really isn't. Kris finds their way through the dark and saves Susie from getting hit, and we go through another one of the arrow sound sections. Now, Ralsei comes back after a little while and pacifies, kind of crumbles the enemy. It ends up being a statue. And once we see Ralsei, Susie asks Ralsei why they didn't tell us the whole story. And Ralsei has a little bit of a breakdown saying that
he knows so much, but he's afraid to talk about it, which is a little sad because Ross just wants to be our friend and he wants everything to be happy. But knowing how the way the story is going to work, it's all right that it's not going to be perfect. I'm not complaining. Nobody else is complaining. So we go up the stairs. We talk to Ross a little bit about things that he may or may not know. We end up trying to go through a door, but we get stopped by a fire extinguisher who tells us the door code. And after we learn the door code, we go back, steal the fountain that Susie made. We make our way back into the church and open up the door. We make our way back into the main dark world of the church in order to try to find the knight again. We go back into the dark world, meet up with Ross, go through a door, and we end up going through a very pretty, very visually pleasing kind of stained glass area. We have a few more fights with some organs and some little Wicca bells, which, again, isn't too hard. We meet back up with my goat Jackenstein, who helps us climb up the wall with the assistance of everyone else that we've spared in the chapter. We give them our thanks, and then we end up going through the dark. And this section of the game is one of my favorite out of the entirety of it, because it just shows how deep the connections with our characters' relationships have grown so far, and it shows how willing our characters are to be there for each other, even after such a short time of knowing. Especially Susie's character, seeing as in the beginning, all she wanted to do was be bad and hurt people, but now all she wants to do is help her friends and save what she can save. And it's just a really heartwarming, touching scene, and being as someone who gets emotionally invested in video games easily, it was something that I enjoyed being a part of. So, after this section, we make our way to the end of the windy hallway. We go up a staircase, and we have a run-in with the knight. Now, Susie runs up to the knight trying to be intimidating, saying that he's got nothing on them because all he can really do is run away. And obviously, Susie immediately wants to fade, which is her style. She goes on to say that if we lose the fountain, it's over for him. And he makes another fountain, which is honestly a really well done, well animated scene. I really enjoyed watching this, and it was really cool to see how much work they had put into this specifically to show the intensity and the dire sense of the situation. So we see the Titan's hand shoot a Kamehameha at us. We are running away, climbing on the tower to try to stop it from attacking us because it won't attack itself. Kris slashes a few times at the eye, which ends up knocking us off the tower, and we land on our feet, which we, after a little while of falling, meet back up with Susie and Ralsei, and the Titan finds us. We have to run away in order to not get captured by it, and just before we jump back down into the fountain, we have to do a dark spawn fight. Now, the thing about this spawn fight is that there's really no way to pacify them per se. You have to use the soul's light to unleash a bright light in order to, I guess, purify them, which is what it says. We go back up the tower once more in order to try to escape the Titan, and we end up having a face-to-face encounter where Susie says that we are going to cut it down. Now, the problem with this fight is that obviously you can't spare the Titan. So I ended up having to do this a few times, and I did end up using Susie and Ralsei to heal Kris at certain points. Now, my preface for this was that I wasn't necessarily acting on the enemy or damaging it with Susie and Ralsei, so I didn't really count it as really a tactical advantage. It was more so just extending the fight. I did still do all the major points of the fight using Kris, and as we go through, I did have to attack because, as I said, this isn't a fight that you can necessarily pacify. So we shine the light on the dark parts. We get tension points, to use our shine ability to get rid of that giant cross on its face in order to damage it. But there's only so much damage that we can do to this Titan before it ultimately guards itself and starts healing, because there's no shot that just us three alone can handle a Titan without there being some repercussions. So the Titan's guard lowers. It has a little bit of a glitch out moment, and then it ends up covering itself after we think that we defeat it. But unfortunately,
the fight is only going to get extended until somehow we can find out a way to damage it with the inside being damaged. Now, plot twist here, which the first time I saw this was insane to me. I was so excited and I thought it was crazy that they made this happen. My goat, Gerson Boom, comes back from the dead to save our three heroes because that's just who he is. And he's just a fucking goat. And I love Gerson. So him and Susie use a amazing attack, which is Dual Buster, because like I said before, dude, I'm just gonna overhype this shit out of Gerson. Dude, he's such a goated character. And I think it really impacts the story that he comes back and he's an inspiration that no matter what, we can't give up because there's always going to be a way to find a way through the fight. So we use a Dual Buster, which is a really powerful attack, and then Susie decides to take us and dunk us inside the face hole of the Titan, allowing us to go inside of it and use our soul to shine a very powerful light in order to defeat the Titan once and for all. Susie wants to run ahead and meet up with the old man to talk to him. After that happened, Ralsei panics and runs after Susie, trying to prevent her from seeing something that shouldn't be seen. Susie shatters the prophecy in disbelief because she doesn't believe that we'll actually let that happen. She laughs it off, which makes Ralsei panic and kind of break down a little bit because he just doesn't believe that there's any way to change the prophecy, which kind of upsets him. So we talk to Ralsei for a bit and we tell him that it's going to be okay, because obviously it's going to be okay. It's us. We're the heroes of the prophecy. So I walk off to seal the fountain with Susie. I give Ralsei one last look, and I go forward to my favorite cutscene. Seeing that line about Susie's smile for the first time when I played was such an impactful moment for me, and it honestly made me tear up because of how incredible I thought the storytelling was. So, after that, we seal the fountain and we come home to see Toriel being a irresponsible mother, and this is where the fandom decides that we all hate Saiyans. So, after that happens, Kris is a little bit restless because of how loud they're being downstairs. And Susie talks about not letting that happen. And with that, the end of chapter 4 happens. So, I have a little bit of notes that I want to go over for the entirety of the game and just kind of my thoughts while I was playing. So, the game wasn't too bad doing it as just Kris. The only issue was really that it just took a lot longer to get through the game because we weren't able to use everybody to their full potential, which, again, isn't bad. It just takes a little bit longer. It's still enjoyable. It's still fun to do. You might pick up some new tactics, new ways of playing, and new methods of doing the fights. Again, I couldn't do the night fight because I tried and tried and tried and I just couldn't do it, and it's fine. You know, I don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. Not everybody does. But other than that, I really enjoyed doing the game this way. It gave me a chance to really play more and experience more of how the game wanted to present itself. And I do really recommend Deltarune to anybody who hasn't played it yet, just because not only is it good like Undertale, but it has an incredible story so far, and I think that the potential for the future chapters is just infinite. So, with that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'm going to be working on more stuff for the future to see what I can put out there. If you guys have anything in particular that you would like to see me try to do in the future, then be free to leave a comment below letting me know what you would like to see. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.